This is going to be the final and only Nilah build guide you need for the rest of Season 13. It's going to be as detailed as possible, but please ask down in the comments below if you have any questions. Hey everyone, it's Enryu, Challenger Nilah player currently at 1032 LP at the time of making this video. Let's not waste any time and let's get right into it. For skill order, you want to max E into Q. Nilah's E ability just gives too much value early on and is necessary for every fight. Lower cooldown and more damage is good, and as you scale up your AD stats, that's when Q will be more valuable to skill up. For runes, you're going to want Conquer and Triumph always, and Alacrity if you don't plan on building any attack speed at all, or if you are allowed to start Doran's Blade because the enemy have an all-in bot lane duel like Samira and Nautilus. But otherwise, I would always default to Bloodline. Last stand is also the default unless you need cutdown for when the enemy has more than 3 tanks or bruisers. Secondary runes, you can choose between scaling with Resolve or Inspiration Tree. For the Resolve tree, you're going to want to pick between Conditioning if you're going for full scale, or Second Wind if you think you're going to get poked out of lane. Second Wind is very good in combination with Doran's Shield, and you're going to want to take Overgrowth or Unflinching depending on if the enemy are CC heavy or not. If you're going the Inspiration tree, just pick between 2 out of the 3 following: Magical Footwear, Futures Market, and Cosmic Insight. I think these runes are pretty self-explanatory. You can't really go wrong with any choice, it's just up to preference. Like maybe some games you want to go in debt to buy more items, sometimes you just want lower summoner spell cooldowns. Now onto the in-game stuff. You should always start with Doran's items because it just provides too much value for Nilah. Doran's Shield if the enemy are poke heavy, and Doran's Blade if it's an all-in lane. Longsword 3 pots is objectively worse than Doran's Shield because not only are you wasting an extra 100 gold on potions, your sustain is still worse than Doran's Shield. Because Nilah is melee, she gets the full D-Shield healing passive. Pull is just a very troll item on Nilah. It gives no health and the healing on it is less than D-Shield and D-Blade, and it gives less stats compared to both items. It works for champions like Zeri and Enryu, but Nilah really doesn't have that luxury. Now onto mythic items. The most viable mythic item choices are Navori, Gale Force, and Eclipse. If you have an Enchanter and no Engage on your team, it's more recommended to go Gale Force, and if you have Engage on your team, you might want to go Navori or Eclipse. For Navori's Quick Blade, you have 2 build paths you can take, the Lifesteal path, or the Glass Cannon full damage build. The Lifesteal build is especially useful if you want to solo carry games without having to rely on your teammates, since you're going to be doing damage but you'll be a lot tankier than normal. You're going to want to take the Resolve runes and go first item Shield Bow into Navori. The reasoning for this is because Shield Bow is an extremely gold efficient item early on, and the build path is very forgiving. Having a Vamp Scepter also helps your early game lane sustain. Keep in mind you cannot buy Maw if you have Shield Bow. For boots, it really depends on the game, but if you plan on going attack speed boots, you should take Bloodline, and if you plan on going defensive boots like Steel Caps, you should take Alacrity. You always want some kind of attack speed in your arsenal, but attack speed boots are just too much in my personal opinion. For your third item, you're going to want to pick between LDR, Mortal Reminder, Bloodthirster, and Phantom Dancer. Usually you want your first 3 items to be all crit items before deviating into other items most of the time. LDR and Mortal Reminder often overlap, but generally speaking, Nilah is not the best heal cut applier, so if you can help it, you should always go LDR, unless everyone else on your team is refusing to buy heal cut. If you don't need LDR yet in the game and you're really ahead, you can always start buying Bloodthirster to make yourself immortal for a while. There are plenty of times where I would teamfight, and when I die my death recap says I tanked 5,000 damage when I only have like 2,000 health. And if you do end up going Bloodthirster 3rd, you should always go Death Stance 4th because Death Stance is extremely OP on Nilah once she has good sustain since she's melee. And if the enemy are predominantly AP damage, then you can buy a Spirit Visage instead of a Death Stance. Then for your last item, you can buy an item like Spear of Shojin for fun, or Guardian Angel in case you die of something random. If you go Phantom Dancer 3rd, you should always go Bloodthirster 4th, and then last item just buy a fill item. However, I would say whenever it does get to late game, you would always sell boots for Phantom Dancer. The Glass Cannon build is just the Collector into Navori build, which is nice for snowballing, but a lot of games nowadays you just can't snowball as easily anymore, especially when both teams have an Enchanter in the game. And now onto the Gale Force Mythic build. Personally, I would always go Gale Force if the enemy has double range bot lane, unless they're just so behind that they pose no threat at all. Gale Force just provides immense value for matchups when you need mobility or a reposition tool, and that tends to be versus double range matchups like Caitlyn Lux, Ezreal Karma, etc. The core build is the following with Collector second if you have an engaged support, or Shield Bow second if you have an enchanter. Third item should almost always be LDR, considering the enemy should have at least one tank. But if they don't, you can continue building crit items like Bloodthirster, or continue to build lethality items like Axiom Mark or Serpent's Fang if the enemy has a ton of shielding. Don't forget that Nilah is a melee champion, so she gets the full bonuses of items such as Serpent's Fang and Death Stance. For the Eclipse Mythic, you generally only buy it when you want to fight a lot in the early game, and the enemy bot lane consists of low to mid-range champions that rely on snowballing. Such examples include Samira, Draven, Kalista, paired with a melee support like Nautilus. Eclipse will help you stay alive and allows you to have better trades in lane, since the shield is only a 6-second cooldown for melee champions. Not to mention, the max health damage it does every time you proc it is pretty insane. Personally, Eclipse is my favorite mythic, but nowadays you can't really go it as often anymore, and it's unfortunate. With Eclipse, you always want to go Collector second into LDR third. After that, just go fill items with whatever you need. Now on to the playstyle of Nilah. She's a very niche champion that has trouble dealing with CC and range because she's just so short ranged as an ADC. But at the same time, Nilah as a champion kind of has a freedom that no ADC has because her AoE is pretty insane for teamfights. So when we play skirmishes, we should actually think of Nilah as a combination between like a cannon and an assassin like Kha'Zix. Obviously, Nilah has the ability to play front to back like any other ADC, but her ability to completely change a teamfight with her EQR combo is pretty insane. But if you're playing front to back as Nilah, it's kind of hard to get onto the enemy backline if they have something like a Syndra or Orianna that just pushes you away or kills you before you even get onto them. So finding opportunities to play the fight from the side or behind the enemy is extremely helpful to breaking stale game states, so make sure to keep that in mind while playing the game. This champion is quite hard to play, especially the higher elo you go, because you can be easily taken advantage of, but also extremely rewarding once you start getting ahead on her and seeing the level differences between you and your support compared to the enemy bot lane. Of course, this is only all possible if you have a support that is willing to stay with you and play with you in lane instead of roaming 24/7, which is honestly quite rare. However, to me, Nilah will always be the most fun champion to play with a dual support, as you can test really rare combos and just have fun in general. Combos such as Nilah paired with Aurelion Sol, Sejuani, Malphite, and many more. I wouldn't recommend one-tricking Nilah, as you might go crazy since she relies on your support more than the average ADC in the first 15 minutes, but learning to play her well is extremely satisfying. And I do want to know that Nilah is better played with engaged supports such as Nautilus, Pyke, or Blitzcrank, and also scaling supports such as Senna versus enchanters. Nilah really doesn't want to be paired with enchanters because she wants to all-in and dive the enemy and not just stay alive in the back. That's all I have for today's video, but I hope I helped you learn a thing or two. If you have any questions or comments on today's content, feel free to leave a comment below. I always try to respond to every comment, but sometimes I miss a few. Make sure to check out our Discord, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, it really helps with the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.